So I wanted to talk a bit about versatile content creation with paragraphs. It's a module that's been around for a few years. It's in Drupal 7 and Drupal 8. But let me begin with telling you who am I. I'm Leander Lindahl. This is not me. I forgot to do the transitions and animations and stuff. But I'm tech lead at the tech lead Drupal platform in the web team in Axis. I have lived in Florence, so I'm very fond of everything from Florence. This is to give you a personal impression of who I am. And I like Bach. But most of my time when I'm not working I spend with my two wonderful children. But that's not why we're here. We're here to find out ¿Qué es párrafos? What is paragraphs? And the concepts in this presentation are from a presentation that was held in DrupalCon New Orleans 2016 by these eminent gentlemen David Needham and Les Lynn. So to explain what paragraphs is, we could use a scenario of a two-column layout. It would have an image, a title, some text, and there are many ways you can achieve this in a website. A classic and not so good way would be this. You do it straight in the body field. The markup would look something like that. And it's kind of common in WordPress, for instance, and also in Drupal, of course. But we then get the dreaded blob. This is from a horror movie from the 50s or 60s perhaps with Steve McQueen. And the blob is something that engulfs everything, eats you up, and it can take over your life. As it did in this movie, it invaded Earth. It can invade your website and make it poorly structured, because it's nice to have the data well structured, both for the editor users. You can get lost if you have everything in markup in the body field, even if you have some tools to kind of create the markup, which isn't actually typing it, but once something goes wrong, it can go very wrong. And of course, for the computers or the robot parsers of the world, it's better to have structured content, because we could then, once the user has created the content, the developers could make sure that the content has a nice markup. So the classical ways, other than the body field, to create a two-column layout or any layouts in Drupal is using fields. Drupal is well known for its field ability. Fields and template files, fields and display suite, or panels. And fields and templates, which is like the basic way of doing something in Drupal, is extremely flexible. Once you have your fields, you can create a template and put the data wherever you want it. But it's more or less, or not less, it's more. It simply requires a good developer and team to make it happen. The fields and display suite method is a bit of a hybrid. It's kind of flexible and doesn't need as much coding, because you can create column layouts, for instance. You can add CSS classes or change. You could, with a select list, select box, you could say this text, I want it to be rendered as an H2 or as a link or something. And then, of course, we have panels, which is very popular, used by many, and it's been around for many years. I have never been a big fan of panels. I think it belongs to the mad scientist approach, because you can configure everything and it's extremely flexible. But that also means that it's extremely easy to destroy a website, or at least the layout of the websites. You need to know what you're doing, and if you know what you're doing on such an advanced level, you may as well code it. So this would be like the traditional structure of a page out of the box in Drupal. You'd have a title, perhaps an image field, and a body field. So what Paragraphs does is that it... well, okay, I changed the order a bit. We'll get to that. But the benefits of Paragraphs is that you can have many types of paragraphs. The page can contain many individual types of paragraphs that retain their distinctiveness and structure. For instance, video, image, accordion, whatever. And you can use all the field types that exist in Drupal. So if there is a contrib module that creates a nice video player or something else, or a slideshow, you can use that field type inside of Paragraphs. So you have access to all the stuff that exists in Drupal. And one big advantage, I think, especially from my point of view, is that you don't have to create a different content editor interface. You use the regular standard Drupal interface for content editing. So now, if we have this classic node structure, we would replace the body field with paragraphs. This would be like a reference field where you can reference many types of paragraphs, and you can assemble the page as you need. And once you start using this, you may as well get rid of the image field and use an image paragraph for that. Yes, and from a conceptual point of view, it's beneficial to make a difference between or tell apart content paragraphs and layout paragraphs. And the content paragraph in this case would of course be, or not of course, but it would be image paragraph, text paragraph, full quotes, etc. Whereas a two-column paragraph would be a layout paragraph because it influences the layout. It's not really content per se. Yeah, and then we have a pony. What is a pony? It's a small horse. It's a beautiful creature that requires a lot of attention. And I love my pony. I don't love your ponies. And what I'm trying to say is that they are special cases where you do a lot of, it's fringe cases where you do a lot of custom configuration to solve a custom or a special problem. But they're not like, they should be you should try to keep them to a minimum because they're hard to support and hard to use to build content for the future. It's more like a, what's it called in English? A nödlösning. Something you do to solve a specific problem. So as I mentioned, the paragraphs can be reordered. Perhaps we'd like to reorder the two-column paragraph and the text paragraph, like that, or the image and the pull quote. And when you use paragraphs like this, the result is that you get a nicely structured HTML that is quite easy then to make mobile or for different viewports, even different media, like for the Apple phone. We haven't done that yet, but perhaps in the future. And paragraphs can be nested. That's a wonderful aspect, which is of course also dangerous because you shouldn't put a layout within a layout within a layout. You should restrain yourself, but you can put, like in the aside layouts type paragraph, you can put 2 content paragraphs or more, and in the 2-column layout you put content paragraphs. So this was our scenario. How would you actually build this in Drupal then? As I mentioned, you can do this in Drupal 7, but in this case I've used Drupal 8, and we add and enable the contrib modules paragraphs and entity reference revisions. And entity reference revisions is a dependency of the paragraph module, so You'll need to install that, and if you're using Drush, it will be automatically installed for you. So once you installed the modules, the first thing you would do is to go to the administration structure page, where you have a new menu item, which is paragraph types, just as you have content types. And it's fairly similar the way you use it. You would click add a paragraph, give it a name. You could upload an image in the newer versions of the module, and you could give it a description. Then you would click save and manage fields, and let's see, now you created the text paragraph type, and it's time to add some fields. So in this case, we just want a simple text formatted long field in the paragraph, and we add that. Now it's been added, and the first content paragraph is finished. And like in cookery shows, we've already pre-baked our paragraphs in the oven, and this is what it would look like. So now we have the three content type paragraphs in place, and we need to have a layout type paragraph, which is simply the same process, with the difference that you would actually add a paragraph field instead of a regular field. And in this case, we'd name it first column, second column, etc. And once you do that, you go, usually if you created content types in Drupal, you know that you get different steps in the creation process, and one step is various settings, and for paragraphs you can define which other paragraph types can be referenced but with a paragraph field. And in this case we have like a negative condition. We want to include everything except the columns too, because that's a layout type paragraph that we don't want people to put inside of the column 2. And that would be it, I think. Yeah, here we have the columns. And now we have our 2-column paragraph in place. So, we're now going to the basic page, and it looks more or less identical to paragraphs. You see the difference here. But the configuration page is it's easy to like confound them. They look very similar. Let's see. Why did I go backwards? Now. So this is the page, and as we said, we'd like to get rid of the body field in this case. So let's throw that away and put a paragraph field in there instead. And now we can actually create a basic page using paragraphs. And as you can see, there's an add 2 columns button there. So let's add 2 columns. We then get the option to put something in the first column, something in the second column, and choose from the paragraph types we defined before. And in this case, we start with an image, and then we add a text as a second step. I put 2 steps in one image here because I was, I wanted to speed it along. And this is what it would look like in the editor mode. And we'd add the same. Below we'd add one more. Let's see. We'd add for the second column more or less the same thing there. And this is what it would look like when it's finished. So we've achieved our goal of creating a 2-column layout, which is then easy for the editor to put stuff into, or remove stuff, or resort stuff, etc. That more or less shows how paragraph works. And one nice aspect of paragraphs is that it's standardized within the Drupal community and used by a lot of people. I think it's, from my impression, it's one of like the most popular ways of building Drupal sites nowadays. And what I wanted to show you here is that there's, for instance, something called, let's see here, there's something called Bootstrap Paragraphs. So if you're using Bootstrap, there's... Oh, I already have the right window. I'll have to do it like this. Yeah, so if you're using a Bootstrap-based framework, you have a lot of stuff for free out of the box. I created like an example where you have an accordion. It's ready to go. You perhaps want to add some custom CSS, etc. And a page with tabs, which is a really nice solution. And if you want to edit this, all you do is, or if you want to create a new page, you enter this stuff, this part here, and you can change, if you want to change the text in the first tab, you click there, change some other text, like that, and then save the page. And we've edited the page. Perhaps we'd like to add an image. There we go, there's the change. And it's a very easy and nice way to allow the editor to create tabbed pages. I could show you also the paragraph types that come with the Bootstrap Paragraphs module. Let's see, I'm in the wrong window now. There we go. So there's our paragraph types. And all the ones called BP something are like ready-made paragraphs that you can just download from Drupal.org and start using, which is really nice. You have carousels, tab, you can integrate Drupal views, you can create modal boxes, etc., etc. So that's a big advantage of the paragraph concept, apart from the fact that it solves a common problem in a neat way. At least that's my judgment. It's also widely used, and there's a lot of contrib modules and themes working with the paragraph technology or method. So yes, I also wanted to show you before I switch back, if anyone's interested in that. There we go. That's the URL to find the Bootstrap paragraphs on Drupal.org. That's my address. And this is the page where you would find the actual paragraphs module. And you all look really tired and hungry for pizza. I'm not sure. I think they said there was a 10-minute delay in the pizza, but I guess we could talk to each other and drink some beer, because I'm saying thank you. And if you have any questions, this is the time.
And then I just have to show you a little bit of our office. This is also made with an Axis camera V59. I don't know if anybody on Axis knows that one. I think it's completely awesome. And this is me just zooming in and out and just playing around. That's Björn, he's the CEO of Oddhill. And it's just like going through like windows and doors, and yeah, it has nothing to do with Drupal, so I'm just going to stop soon, but just this part is just, yeah, amazing. But what I'm going to talk about today, this is actually, I've been in the Drupal business since kind of like 2008, 2009, when I co-founded Oddhill. I'm not a developer, but I'm the one who has been like sitting at the side looking at the business part of open source. And that's what I'm going to talk about, and how we at Oddhill sees that part. So it's 8 years of building a business with Drupal and getting value and giving back. And it's my first Drupal talk in a Drupal meetup. But we at Oddhill have done like 4. What do you say, Eric? Christopher? Yeah. And this is actually just a quick look back on how it was This is actually Adam who founded the company with me back in 2009. And on that part, it was actually a real battle between open source and proprietary CMS. And that's only 8 years ago, but when we started, it was really hard to imagine that large players, perhaps not like Axis, but like Tetra Pak or those kind of companies would just like, oh, we're going for that open source CMS. And when we started, I had a really fun time with Wayback Machine when I prepared for this presentation. And this was what Drupal was in 2009. And it has happened a lot of things since then. And this was actually just, we were 22 and 23 years old, and this is just like obvious now, but perhaps not obvious back in 2009, that we could get a code base to actually build advanced platforms and have a community to ask questions and everything about that. So when we started, we could actually build this website, which is no longer active. It's also from back in 2009. But instead of having to develop our own CMS and those parts, yeah, you know the whole drill there. And this was, of course, unnecessary to build this site in Drupal because they really didn't need to change anything on it. But back in those days, all large organizations were in proprietary software. So we had like 3 years with no money, and at that point it was just like starting in the open source community. Then it was just like really high risk because you really had to fight for everything. But then actually even Region Skåne just said that we want to build our sites in Drupal. And that was a really large part for us and working with them. And then like a lot of larger organizations joined. And this is only in a time period of 8 years. And that part has been extremely good, and the Drupal community has been like buzzing during this time, and that buzz was what led us to actually have these large organizations coming in. And today this is what like Drupal's website looks like today, and that's kind of a big difference from what it was before. And you can actually go to the Acquia headquarters in Boston, and that's a really amazing place and everything like that. But when you look at this, all the part that makes it possible is actually giving back by modules and events. And I know that, I think you and me, Leander, has hosted a couple of events before. Like, what was it last time? 3 years ago or 4? Yeah, so, yeah. Yeah, exactly. So 4 years ago, and then we actually just got those large clients too and got like really stressed. So we didn't do any events anymore, and now we're actually having just searching for Drupal developers, and I think that's a connection. Oh, that was on the wrong slide as well. But for me, this is a really large part of just being in the open source ecosystem, and it's really easy to forget that just hosting an event like this, contributing with some module, something, back to the community, that's what makes it all possible. And it's really easy to forget it. the more work you have, it's really, really easy to forget it. And I think that we at Oddhill, and sorry for harassing you, Erik, Christopher, when was the last time we launched a new module? Yeah, okay, so that's yeah. But just being able to contribute with the modules and with those parts, if we don't do that as a whole, then I think that we're going to have a really, really boring future in the Drupal community. So I think that we at Oddhill, now when Axis just took this great step of just like, yeah, let's have a Drupal meetup, then we are going to have another Drupal meeting in like 6 months' time or something, and just try to build this like nice community even more in Malmö. And let's see, sorry. Let's see. Thank you. And then also on that part, it benefits the community and it generates business for everybody in the community and makes work simpler. So, and I'm just have to say that like 2014, even .NET got like open source. So I'm kind of happy about that because that means that that battle between proprietary kind of won, but you still need to do stuff. And that's also on a final note that I think would be really, really great, because when we started, we had like 10 Drupal companies acting in the south of Sweden. Now I think we're 3 or something, but a lot of consultancy firms. So just engage in Drupal. It was hard to start a company in Drupal back in those days, but today it's much simpler because you have the whole code base, and or become a consultant or join a company and start contributing. And then I'm just doing this fine product placement of like Drupal, Oddhill, 040, and of course Axis as well. But who, by the way, is because Oddhill never hires out consultants, but Axis is actually the first one who has been able to get somebody from us to go out. So, yeah. So, that was my presentation, and instead of questions and those parts that I actually tend to see like a one-way communication, I would just like you to ask your next door neighbor on like, how can I or we or the organization that I do contribute to Drupal? Could everybody do that? Just like the one sitting, yeah, no, yeah, sure, yeah. 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 I think it's both way actually. I think we have like a Klarna module that we did. I'm going to let that over to you. Yeah. How many users was that rabbit hole Yeah. Let's see. Ah, 23,025 sites using that module. And that's kind of nice. So, but then I actually think that, does anybody more have a question? Yeah, yeah. uh, we're kind of bad on doing budgets. No, but it's kind of like a whole. It's of course marketing, but it's also a part of like sustainable business. So I think that if we look at it firmly, the part of the marketing is used mainly when I'm standing here and talking about the module. I don't think that we have gotten any customers directly from posting a module, but by posting modules, you actually send a message. So it's on the both parts. Oh, yeah.